It's about time I got back to this series, and I am finally back! And boy, have I missed this series. It's so good, and it's probably one of my all-time favorite books. So gosh darn, there are high expectations for the sequel. Alright, so let's get some background stuff back in place. The Haunted Bookstore Book 2, as of February 28th, so about a week ago from recording this, has a rating of about 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, with only how do I do this? 50 50 ratings, which tells me that probably not that many people have read the book, which is actually not that surprising when the first book only got 250 ratings. However, it's also a shame, but we'll get back to that. It's written by Japanese author Shinobu Maru, just like the previous one. And it was first published in March of 2022, and I believe that's the English copy. I am not sure when the Japanese one was published. The book follows Kaori and Tsuime's adventures in the spirit realm. Like the first book, the book consists of quite a lot of short stories with a consistent theme and an overarching story theme thingy. It's not quite a story, but it's not quite just a theme. It culminates in the final story, where everything's going to be wrapped up. So, as you can see here, let's just zoom it in. It has prologue, chapters, side story chapters, epilogue, bonus story. So, without further ado, let's talk about the cover. This is such a colorful, beautiful cover. Just like the first one, the cover is super stylized and filled with great details from the story. Like in the case of the bridge, the butterflies are hugely important to one of the story. And it's kind of the most important story in the book, at least according to me. So it makes sense to have that front and center highlighted. To me, it's an absolutely banger of a cover in every sense of the word. And I probably, if I wanted to, I could sit down and decipher and go through every little detail. But just know the entire book in itself is absolutely gorgeous, even though mine has been mistreated a little bit. It's still absolutely beautiful, and I can't wait to get into the first section of the book. Alright, so let's start out with the prologue. It was such a cute story, and it actually made me remember how good the series is. Like beforehand, I was like, okay, it was a really good series. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. And now I'm just mind blown. It was so good. And to be honest, it actually made me a little teary too. So, yeah. That was really, and something I really like about this book, or these books in general, is how the prologue isn't necessarily part of the main story or the overarching story, but it sets the overall theme and the idea that the book will work and explore. In this case, it's the feeling of family when you aren't necessarily related. In this case, family when you are adopted. But it might also be, stepbrother, like your parents divorcing and your mom or dad is marrying into another family, and then are you a part of that family? How do you belong? How do you fit? The new dynamics with that, are you going to be good enough? All that. And that's an insanely deep theme to work with, and it's something I think a lot of people in some ways can relate to. So, difficult theme to work with, but hugely important for many people. So, let's get to chapter 1. A big question I had going into this was how they're going to expand the universe. The first book was a great self-contained story and world, so naturally I was worried the book would feel a bit too samey in its set pieces. Luckily, Shinobu Maru has thought of that, and right away we traveled to Okinawa, which, from what I understand and the feeling I got from the book, is super different from the city where the bookstore is, on general rest of Japan. So it really expanded the world in a great way. And chapter 1 and 2 also show us two amazing things. One of them is just how smart Kaori is. She isn't told how to deliver the books, nor what to do specifically, or the books she creates, all that stuff. All stuff she does. She isn't told what to do specifically. Instead, she's just giving some information that feels a little random, and then she figures out what is needed to do and how to do it. And the entire first chapter story was so good, and it also made me a little teary. In the second chapter, we then learn that many of the older spirits feel like the humans have given up on believing in them. In reality, that isn't the case, because we see this festival, and it shows us how it's quite the opposite. We see that the world changed. The humans are still ready to believe in spirits. But because the spirits are so slow to change or don't want to change, they can't keep up with the humans. And this creates a disconnect. However, when one of the birds, I really don't remember which one of them it is, one of the bird brothers, makes the bonfire for the festival extremely unrealistically tall, giving no gasoline or anything we use. The humans realize it must be the spirits that blesses the festival, because it's the specific spirit the festival celebrates. And here Shinobumaru shows us how just because we explain a lot and science has taken front seat in many cases, tradition and old beliefs are still something we can fall back on and believe in. And the story also, the two stories, both of them actually, reinforces the theme of the book, albeit in two different ways. So in this chapter, instead of just family, it expands it to the more broad theme of belonging. We learn how many spirits have left the human realm to live in the spirit realm, but during special events they will return where they used to live, because it's still where they belong in their hearts. It's like moving out of your parents' home or move away from a small town where you know everyone, and then return during Christmas to see that even though things change, you can still recognize it, and it still feels kinda how it used to, but still a little different. And I think it hits perfectly well the theming of this book. But let's get onward to the side story and see how that handles family. In this book there's only one side story, which is perfectly fine. I don't even expect a book to have a side story section. So it's kind of weird that there is a side story in the book, where the book itself consists of a lot of small stories. But it's a great way to show we aren't viewing things from Kaori's perspective, this time from Suimei's. And when I started reading the side story, I was pleased let me try again. When I started on the side stories, I was quite pleased how it seemed like it delved into Suimei as a character. I thought it was neat how we got to see Suimei struggling with the ideas of emotion. But boy, was I not ready for that punch at the end. Where the story really started to hit was when Tamaki showed Suimei how he can't feel emotions properly. And by saying probably, I'm not saying there's a set way, but it's more like he knows what he's supposed to feel, but he doesn't feel it all the way in his heart. So it's kind of like he feels anger, but not deep anger when people are threatened. And it kind of sets up the entire story with Suimei wanting to learn how to feel emotions, understand how they work. It is of course very, very difficult to explain to anybody, and I don't think anybody can explain it. But it's still like, how are we gonna explain it? And he tries to have Kaori explain love, and I thought that was such a cute, because the way she explained it, and then him just going, "Oh, that's how I feel around you," and she's just, "What?" I thought it was such a cute scene how she blushed up, and he just didn't quite understand how big of an emotion love is, and how saying, "Oh, love is not really the case. There's so many different ways." I think it was perfect. Now, I wasn't ready for how the story ended, and I won't spoil it. So instead, I'll tell you how I experienced it. I was reading the book in the bus on my way home from a job interview, and I just started crying. I got so emotional from the story, I started crying on the bus. So every time someone passed me, and I was sitting up in front of the bus of course, they looked at me really weirdly. Here I was, an adult, sitting in the bus, crying while reading a light novel. I can't imagine what other people were thinking, other than I must be some kind of weirdo, but it did hit me like that, and it is probably by far the best story in the book. So far, read the book, but I think I could have told you that before I started on the book, so let's get to the rest of the book. Chapter 3 was such a wild ride. It it made me sad seeing how, as the chapter progressed, Kaori got more and more worried that she wasn't good enough of a daughter. And frankly, the idea of am I good enough? Is what I'm doing the right thing? It's probably something a lot of people can relate to. For many people, making your parents proud to tell them, like, proud enough to tell their parents, their friends, what you're doing or what you've accomplished, is a worry. And I don't know many people, like, I haven't met many people from Japan at all, but being a collectivist society, I can definitely see that being a worry much more than here in the Western world. But still, we do see it. Some of us do feel it from time to time. So it's so wild. So Kao is wondering if her dad is proud of her, wondering if she's good enough, if he's just an embarrassment. It's a really tough subject to tackle. But I really do believe Shinobu Maru does a great job handling it and showing that this worry is most likely only in our own head and not something you should be worrying about, because your parents are probably going to be proud of you no matter what. When Shinonomine, I'm so bad at his name. Isn't it some here? Shinonome, there we go. Shinonome does a great job Wait, what? Where am I, Master? Oh, here we go. So the entire thing goes on that Shinonome is working on like this secret project thing. I lost track there for a second. And it ends up being a book. Quite an epic book, because spirits live and die on stories. Like really anything in the world live and die on the stories they like fit into. And he wants to collect them. Not like Pokemon, but more like he wants to collect all the stories into one big book so the spirits can tell each other the stories of their family and where they're from. And that sounds so epic. I really want to read that. I want Shinobu Maru to actually write that story in real life. That would be great. Now, how chapter 3 ends is wild. And when I read it, I didn't even have time to not think about it. I just had to go straight to chapter 4. So, chapter 4 is mainly the fight with the villain of the story. And before we discuss that, let me talk a little about setup and payoff. Shinobu Maru introduced a new character in the side story, but we didn't learn much about her, and it seems like she was just a one-off character for the side story. However, she was not just a one-off character, but relevant for the climax of the story. The entire climax is about the loss of loved ones and their unwillingness to let go, and that's what the character kind of represents, and the story behind the ghost or spirit. And Shinobu Maru hits this idea perfectly. It's insane to think that you can stop change, but you can try. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Losing someone always hurts, and it's tempting to wish for the world to never change, so you won't ever forget those that you lost. But Shinobu Maru shows us that just because time keeps going and changes happen, it doesn't ruin what happened in the past. It doesn't change the memory of the people you touched. Just like the previous book, this book is just phenomenal. I really can't recommend it enough. But let's get to the epilogue and the bonus story. Let's start with the epilogue. It isn't dealing with any big ideas, nor is it trying to. It's a sweet little send-off to the story, and it doesn't need to be more than that. It's cute and straight to the point, and it made me smile from ear to ear. However, it does actually tie up the entire theme thing with the people you love, the stories, the memories. Because Shinonome, is his name right? I'm so bad. Shinonome, yeah. Shinonome's book gets published and is an instant success in the spirit world because people remember like the great times, the stories, all that stuff. And it kind of harkens back to the feeling of family with the memories, the stories you tell your family. Every Christmas you go, oh, remember last year when blah blah, all that stuff. It's such important, and I think tying it up in a book, like a memory book in this case, for people who in many ways feel forgotten or left behind is just perfect. And also Shinonome shows again like how proud he is of Kairi, because he keeps talking about in the epilogue how if it wasn't for her, he would never be able to to finish the book. So it kind of goes in circles. It's like you want to do something, but where am I going with this? I'm going off script here. I'm sorry. it's to me, it's such a hugely important theme to work with. And I think something that people have to realize is working with family, working with the theme of family. You can do it in many ways. You can do it the Fast and Furious way, which, fun action flick, whatever. But going deep into, like, making proud. Here, Shinonome gets his, like, biggest wish done, which is making a book. And that's not what he's most proud of. What he's most proud of is his daughter running the bookstore when he's being a lousy. So, yeah. I think that's where I'm going. It is that no matter what, your family is always going to be proud of you. Now, let's get on back to the script here, and let's get to the side story, the bonus story. Sorry, not side, bonus. And the bonus story isn't quote-unquote important for the book, or at least for the overall story. But it made me smile a lot. And where it becomes important is it's just a cute story. But it also made me smile a lot. I read the same thing twice. So great here. I went off script and now I'm lost. Let me try again. Now, the bonus story isn't especially important to the overall story, but it just made me smile a lot. And where it becomes important is it's just a cute story. That's it. It's just a cute story. But why is that important? You asking? Well, I'm asking for you. It's important because the story deals with the entire book deals with a heavy theme, and therefore having a sweet little send-off to, like, that doesn't work with the heavy theme in a direct way. It's just a way of easing you out of it. It makes you happy, makes you smile, but it of course also sets up the third book, but it makes you smile and makes you happy. And that's kind of the purpose of the bonus story, in my opinion. Maybe I missed something. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if I missed the theming. But let's get to the conclusion. Should you read this book? Yes. Yes, you should. I cannot understate how much you have to read these books. The theme is always something relevant and heavy, and Shinobu once again works their magic, distilling something heavy that can be difficult to talk about into an easy to read book. I can't wait to read the next book. I can't recommend this series enough. I think it might be my favorite series, and all the books are probably on my top 5 list. I'm kind of in doubt whether these books are my favorite books of all time or not, but it's at least my favorite series of all time. So yeah, read the book, read the series. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Leave a like, a comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next book review. Goodbye.